I thought about it this morning, and believe it or not, oddly enough, I mean, I know it's 10 a.m. Eastern where you guys are. I've been up for hours, like 5 hours or something. It's crazy because you wake up at 5 a.m. and it's still 10 a.m. in Ghana. So everybody else, I'm still a late riser, even getting up super early. And I've been up and I've been thinking about what I've been seeing here. If you've ever been, how many of you have been to Ghana and maybe seen the slave dungeons at Elmina and also the Cape Coast? If you haven't done it yet, it's gonna affect you. You're probably gonna cry or something if you have a soul in your body. You cannot go into those spaces without being affected because they just sort of explain to you what our ancestors went through. It was terrible. It was atrocious. It was just about as dehumanizing as you can ever imagine. Like probably the most dehumanizing story I've ever told and or I've ever heard. And it's crazy to me that we are trained so readily to be sensitive to what the Jewish community went through, but we don't have a lot of empathy for what our own people went through. And I think that speaks to number one, what colonization does to our minds in terms of making us not very sensitive to our own pain, but we're very sensitive to the pain of others. We love to make other people comfortable. We love saving other people. We save them economically. We lift them up economically. We're there to comfort them in a lot of different ways, but I don't know if we're there to comfort ourselves. And in fact, actually, from an economic standpoint, one thing that we all know, that just from being in this class for 2 minutes, you know how much black economic activity and I'm just talking about the economics. I'm not talking about everything else. Black economic activity literally is what stimulates the entire white economy. This has been going on for probably about 600 years now since they hit the shores of Africa and were able to go in there and take all the resources. Dr. Claude Anderson does a wonderful job in his book, Black Labor, White Wealth, of explaining how from the very beginning they had what was referred to as the doctrine of unequal exchange. The doctrine of unequal exchange basically says, you give me something that has a value of $1, I'm gonna give you something that has a value of $100. Basically, it says that we're trading with each other, and what I'm giving you is worth far more than what I'm receiving from you. Does everybody understand what that means? And you should understand Dr. Anderson's ideas. His website is powernomics.com. So I hope you'll go to powernomics.com and go take a look at some of this man's books. And if you own the books already, I hope that you'll industrialize yourself. I hope that you will militarize your commitment to black wealth. I'm talking about us maximizing and really systematizing our greatness by simply saying, look, it ain't enough for me to be educated. I got to educate everybody else. Do you understand? It's not enough for me to elevate economically. I got to elevate everybody else. It's not enough for me and my family to do good. I need the masses to do good. I want to elevate the whole hood. I want everybody around me to see that light and to be guided and to have those instructions and to have the breakdown and the systems and the processes in place. So what I'm saying to you is if you go to Dr. Anderson's website, powernomics.com, and you see his books and you say, wow, that's a great book. Sure, feed your mind, feed your soul, but damn it, feed everybody else too. Feed the children, feed your spouse, feed your friends, your school teachers, feed all them damn kids. It must be. See, this is something. Hold on, give me a second. I'll put this over here. Hold on. This is one of the things that I gotta jump into. Is here's the deal. Here's what I figured out from the trip to Ghana. Not that I figured this out. It became very clear to me. Let me say this. This is the point of clarity I had. I listened to God, and God was talking to me when I was in that castle. The ancestors were definitely talking to me. I felt all that. I looked at Kwame and Nkrumah, and I instantly, and I admit I'm a stupid African American. I didn't know as much about Nkrumah as I should have known. I'd heard his name, but I really studied his story when I was there. And I told my wife, I said, I looked at his picture and I immediately started welling up on the inside. I felt like tears. I felt like my throat started getting full. I said, oh my God, I'm looking at this man's picture and I didn't even know his full story yet, but I felt it already. And I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know as much about him as I should have, but now I know. You know me, I do the deep dive. When I dive into something, I'm gonna dive into it. And we did that conversation the other day, and now let's have a different conversation. This is going to drill into the economics. And so here's the point of clarity that I had yesterday at the Castle of Elmina when they were talking about the door of no return, um, the place where they would keep us locked up like animals, like livestock, starve us to death, beat us to death, rape us to death, months and weeks in horribly unsanitary conditions before they would ship us off to a place where we never see our family again. The what I thought about, what I realized is I said only a demon would treat other human beings that way. Like only it's like where do you people come from? What planet, what dimension, what part of hell produced people that would treat other human beings that way? Right? Like because the first thought is like, okay, what was going on? Like what were the Africans not ready? Like what were they, and it's like no, it's not that they weren't ready, it's that they couldn't even imagine human beings doing that to each other. Like really, it makes me think about Dylan Roof, the white boy that they came into the church and shot everybody up, and then they took him to Burger King. Um, it's like you could say something to the people in the church and say, "Oh, well, why weren't you ready? Why did you let him do that to you?" But it's like, well, you're in church. You don't expect somebody to come in with a gun and kill everybody. You just don't. That it's like that's the furthest thing from your mind. You're not operating on that frequency. So when you are a good person, and I can tell you, the time I spent in Ghana, what I love about Ghana is that the people here are very loving, very wonderful people. Is that when you are on the frequency of love, you're not even thinking about the frequency of hate. Like when you're trying to be an angel to another person, you're not imagining yourself dealing with the devil. You're not thinking about the devil. You're thinking about positive things. You can't be that negative. You're not even. It's like I offered you some food and you pulled out an AK-47. What's that got to do with chicken? Like I don't even that I'm not. I was thinking about making sure that your food was hot, and you're trying to figure out how to kill me and eat me, right? And so that really speaks to the enigma that the Africans felt when Europeans landed on their shores. It's like we didn't even think that human beings could act like this. We thought animals did this, but not people, right? So what this really said to me, it gave me just the utmost clarity in letting me know what we are dealing with. Like, like you really are dealing with the devil. You are dealing with, I said, oh my God. I told my wife, I said, man, oh, I said, whoa. I mean, it hits different, right? We've heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan talk about the devil for a long time, and we know what it meant, kind of. But now it's like you when you really study these stories, you start saying, okay, yeah, this is pretty demonic. This is terrible. So here's where I'm going with this. So I said, okay, so how do you how do you live it? How do you coexist with the devil? How do you do that? You know, how do you coexist with the devil without falsely believing that in order to compete with the devil, you have to imitate the behavior of the devil? And this is the problem. This is why I tell you I'm never going to be a capitalist. I'm not interested in being a capitalist because sometimes we think that in order to compete with the devil, you got to become a demon. I don't want to be a bigger demon. So what's the answer? What can you do? What do you one thing that we know is that as powerful as the devil is, we know that God is more powerful than the devil. So if I'm going to fight the devil, like I'm not trying to be a bigger demon, I'm not trying to lose my soul. Maybe I have to tap into the God that lives inside of me, right? Maybe instead, maybe the way I fight your hate is I have to outdo your hate with just so much love for myself, love for my people. Maybe even I'll have some love left over for you when your demonic ass realizes how debaucherous you are. And maybe that's the solution because I literally was stuck with that. I said, gosh, it would have been crazy to tell the Africans, yeah, you're gonna have to be as savage as the Europeans because the Europeans they went through the Middle Ages. They had the Black Plague. They've been murdering each other on behalf of things like Christianity for 1,000 years. So you're gonna have to out thug them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like people do. You ever see that where you deal with anybody ever dealt with like somebody who's really addicted to nigger culture? Like everybody here, everybody in this room probably knows at least one nigga. And I'm not going to use that term anymore, but I have to use it just to make the point clear. Tell me if you know what I'm talking about. You ever dealt with somebody that wants to get real ghetto with you? They want to get loud. They want to get violent. They want to just behave in a ridiculous way. And the temptation, the first temptation is, oh, you didn't know who you were playing with. Oh, I'm gonna show you that I can be as ghetto as you. I'm gonna show you that I could take it back to the hood. Oh, I was born in the projects. Oh, you think I'm scared of you? Oh, you think you with the oh, I can show you. I know how to whoop ass too, right? Like you get that temptation. That's the first instinct that a lot of us have. I have that instinct. I go through that a lot because people think that because I'm a college professor that I must be soft. And I'm like, you have no idea. You don't understand. I what I had to go through to get to where I am. You don't know where I come. I'm the son of Larry Watkins. My father has killed people. So I could theoretically I could kill someone if I needed to, and I wouldn't lose sleep. If you some people need to be killed, right? Right. That's why we have militaries, right? So I've gone through that too. But then the problem though is that when you get muddy with muddy people, then you just get mud on yourself. You end up feeling worse, right? So because you used to operate on this frequency, so you went all the way down to the basement to match somebody's energy, and then after it's over, your energy is affected as well. In an irreparable way. Do you understand? Like you don't like yourself as much. It's like, damn, every time, like the Godfather, he said, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in, right? That's what nigger culture does, right? Every time you try to get out, they pull you back in. So next thing you know, you on a carnival cruise throwing bottles of Hennessy at somebody, right? Like, because they done stepped on your toe, right? So here's my point. All right, so let me start. Let me get to this. I promise you, we're getting to the economics, but I got to lay the groundwork to understand it. Help us understand this. During my time to Africa, one of the things I realized is I said, okay, we're dealing with demonic culture. How do you deal with a demon without becoming a demon? What does that look like? Because you don't want to imitate the devil, but you're going to have to defend yourself against the devil. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, if you look at the economic system in America and around the world, most white people cannot survive economically without extracting wealth from black people. Do you understand that? Most white societies, European societies, America, etc., cannot be as rich as they are without extracting wealth from the black diaspora, black community all around the world. That's how they got rich. Okay, this is an economic fact. My doctorate's in this stuff, but it does you don't need no PhD to know what it looks like when one person robs another person, and the robber is rich, and the person that got robbed is poor. Right? You don't need a PhD to understand basic dynamics that are happening around the globe. For example, the fact that all this oil was discovered in Guyana, but when my wife and I spent a semester in Guyana, there was poverty like you would not believe. And in fact, speaking of Guyana, there was a big lawsuit that was filed where Chevron and Exxon were fighting over who was going to get the oil in Guyana. Wasn't no black people in this case, just Chevron, one white company fighting against another white company to say which of us is going to get this Negro oil, right? It's not, but I mean, I know Guyana has a mixed culture, but most of the people we met there were black. Or when I go to Ghana and they have the Gold Coast, which is called the Gold Coast because the coast had lots of gold. Imagine that, right? You go to other places around the world. Go to the African American community. You have the best athletes on the planet. I watched the entire Super Bowl, which was the blackest Super Bowl ever because you had black people on the field, you had black people on the stage, but they ain't got no black people up in the owner's box. You're making the chump change. You're not making the real money. You look at what black culture does for the sale of high-priced European fashion items around the globe. You look at how much, you look at why we did a training on this, we did a whole breakdown on this. Why Bernard Arnault, who's worth $200 billion, who runs Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy, terms that are very common in the black community, why he was sitting with Beyonce on one side, Jay-Z on another side, and the rapper Future on the other side of that. He was doing that because he knows what he can extract from black people. So being in Ghana just woke up my spidey senses to remind me of the obvious, which is that for hundreds of years we have been a commodity that has been used for the economic benefit of other people. They extract your labor, they extract your intellect, they extract your culture, they extract your talent, they extract your time, they extract your children. Even your children are an asset. And I'm going to break this down for you. So here's what I want to do today. I can't talk about everything that's on my brain because if I literally try to do that, I'm going to be talking all day long. So I'm going to try my best to condense this into a specific lesson so that I don't make anyone's head explode because they're going to be like, Boyce was talking for 47 hours and he would not stop. It's because that's how many ideas and thoughts are going through my head because the ancestors are talking. They're all chattering in my ear and they're like, tell them this, tell them this, tell them this, tell them this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is focus on one particular point that came to mind, which was I asked my wife, I said, where do these demons come from? Just like thugs are made in America. Well, who made these people into the kinds of thugs that could roll up on somebody's shore, take a free meal, and then say, I want to enslave your whole family and rape your children and take all your money? Like where do these people come from? What culture creates this? Because I remember I've always told you economics is culture. We've talked about this. My book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, all I do is I break down the culture of economic strength. And so the goal of this breakdown that I'm going to share with you is again not training you on how to be a devil, it's teaching you how to defend yourself from the devil. See, I'm not here to teach you how to enslave other people. I'm teaching you how to keep from becoming someone's slave. I'm not here to teach you how to be a capitalist, but I'm here to break down and explain to you how capitalism captures people. Right? So capitalism. So when people say capitalism is the devil, they're right. Capitalism is brutal. It's evil. It's unforgiving. It's horrifically raw in the sense of I'm going to beat you up, take your stuff, and if you can't do nothing about it, then God has ordained me to come and take your stuff because you're too weak to defend it. That's the idea. This is what. So let's break this down. Let's go through this because I said okay, I need to know what culture created these sons of bitches that felt like it was okay to go into this other continent and do these things to people who were very peaceful and loving and supportive. Let's dig into that. First, the first thing with Europe in terms of just stuff that I was looking at is one, they became very militaristic and thought about things in a certain kind of way. Largely, a lot of it started with the Roman Empire from the 1000 AD to 1500 AD. Rome was big on administrative, military, and engineering infrastructure. So they, of course, the Romans learned everything from the Africans. That just the Africans weren't interested in using it to attack and kill people, whereas the Romans were a little more aggressive in their disposition. So even after the fall of the Roman Empire, there were certain ideals related to conquest and centralized power and militarism that existed throughout Europe. And then also when you had Christianity kind of spreading around the world, you had the groundwork for religious conquest, where the morality became one where people seemed to feel that if you are heathen, I can do anything I want to you. That what I do to your flesh doesn't matter because I'm saving your soul by beating the hell out of you until you submit to whatever religious ideology that I tell you you should submit to, right? Because so I'm hurting you, but really I'm doing something good for you. Like that's the really warped logic behind that. Next was, and this was something I'd always thought a lot about, was the Dark Ages. Remember, the Europeans lived in the mud for quite a while, for like 500 years. And so during that time, they were very fragmented, they were poor, They were constantly at war with each other. I mean, you had the Vikings and a lot of different tribes. The Danes which I think they were connected to the Vikings. You just had all these different European factions that were very quick to go and take all your stuff and slaughter your whole family and kill everybody in the village and stuff like that. And so life was really brutal. And what this did was this created a mindset of survival of the fittest. That look, if you have something and you're not defending it, then it's my job to come in there and kick your ass and take it. And so a lot of nobility and kings became powerful, and knights became powerful by pillaging things, and so warfare became very normal. They became quite ghetto in their behavior. You got that cousin that comes over that's used to fighting for food, and but you're not used to fighting for food, and then you don't understand why he punched you in the eye and took your potato, and you're like, why would you punch me and take the potato? There's plenty of potatoes for everybody. Well, he comes from a scarcity environment, a scarcity mindset. You come from an abundance mindset. So you're sharing openly. He's he's thinking he's gonna have to kill you to get that piece of chicken, right? So it's mindset, right? So this is one of the things that's very important to understand as you build Black economics. One of the strengths of those who created Black Wall Street was that they didn't operate from a scarcity mindset. They operated from an abundance mindset. The abundance mindset says, I can do well and you can do well at the same time. That me doing well is not gonna be more likely to happen if I make sure that you're not doing well. Right. So this is why I was talking to some of the students over here in Ghana and I said, I think about things like jealousy. I try my best to eliminate jealousy because I think jealousy is just a wasteful emotion. Because you're assuming that someone having less means you have more, or that someone having joy means they're stealing something from you. And I just don't believe that it has to be that way. So really, one of the issues with capitalism, which is why I'll never be a capitalist. Don't call me a capitalist. It's almost like calling me the N word. The reason I don't want to be a capitalist is because capitalism is built on that Eurocentric scarcity mindset. Like, in order for me to do well, my company has to be number one. Look at how many US companies fight to be number one. They almost act like being number two just don't even matter, right? It's like, no, if you're number two and you're rich, and then they're rich and he's rich and she's rich, why can't we all just be rich together? Why we got to beat each other up just so we can be number one? That's a mental illness, by the way. That's a mental illness. That's a mental health problem. And it shows itself in the low quality of life that most Americans live. Most Americans do not have happy lives. There's a massive epidemic of mental illness all throughout this country. People are stressed out, overworked, they feel underpaid. You're not treating your workers right. People are getting sick and dying from cancer, from food that's being fed to them by these corporations that are trying to squeeze every nickel they can out of you. And then after they beat you up and take your money, then the healthcare system comes along and says, oh, yeah, we got a pill that'll make you feel better, but it's going to cost you $1,000. And next thing you know, you die broke, and you die broke and sick and unhappy and everything else. And I don't even want to talk about what's going on with marriages and relationships and family. I listen to people talk about their relationships, and I'm like, how the hell are you going to stay married to somebody? You sound like a selfish person. Like you can't do family when you're selfish. That doesn't even work. Anyway, let me keep going. Then there were the Crusades. The Crusades happened between 1095 and 1291, and that just gave this religious justification for mass violence. And what's crazy about the religious Crusades, which tells you how warped the Eurocentric mindset is you would literally have the Pope order an invasion of a country, and the Pope would tell you to go murder as many people as possible. How the hell you that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And if you go to Ghana, you'll see where the slave dungeons, on top of the slave dungeons is a church. There's a church right there. So they will worship God while they have people down below that are wailing and screaming in pain and dying in pools of their own blood and feces, but yet you're praying to God. Like that, you need a therapist. Something's wrong with you. And so during the Crusades, they got into a whole lot of gangster stuff, which basically is when the Europeans learned a lot of things that weren't necessarily being discussed in Africa, like siege warfare, building castles to protect what you have, and brutal combat, things like that. And so a lot of the Crusaders that went out and would go kill a lot of people, they would be rewarded. They would be given land and money and stuff like that. Then you had the Black Death. the Black Death. This is after they were already ghetto as hell and savage as hell. The Black Death pops up, the plague, which killed one third of Europe in a 4 year period. That's very scary, right? So I just think about that. Like imagine one third of all Americans dying in 4 years. That's what happened in Europe. So during the plague, it caused a massive shortage of labor. So a lot of landowners became very desperate to protect their wealth, and they were like, "How do we get the labor?" Well, ultimately, these class divisions justified using anybody for labor, including slaves. So they began to see um, people as a commodity. Like, okay, the more people I own, the more labor I can get. And that's obviously a problem if it's involuntary servitude, but it is it's okay if you're talking about like for example, I want to have a lot of children because then I have people that can help me work the farm and stuff like that or work the family business. So the point of the matter here is that human beings are an asset, and we've talked about that. I've told you, stop thinking about your children as a liability. Stop thinking of them as just an expense. Stop thinking about kids as a waste of time. Children are an asset, and it's up to you to decide if you want to use that asset for good or for evil, or if you want to waste it. But I can tell you, in this quest to build black wealth to protect yourself from the demons of capitalism, I would encourage you to dig for every resource that naturally belongs to you. And so, one of the biggest fights for Africa overall, in my view, is how do we, as black people around the world, make sure at the very least that the abundance that we were blessed with is allowed to flourish, and that it is protected, and that we are consistently investing in the growth of these resources so that our people can be protected from the demons of capitalism. Because we've mentioned before that if you're not preparing your kids by teaching them investing, wealth building, starting businesses, how to work together, then someone's going to come along and make them into a slave because they're dealing with the devil. That's what you're dealing with. So the question I would ask any parent is, if you're not preparing your child financially, if you're not educating them economically, if you're not investing on their behalf and teaching them how to do the same for themselves, why would you throw your child out there butt naked and defenseless in an economic system run by demons? I'm not saying every white person wants to be a demon. I am saying that there's something wrong with that culture. There's something wrong with that culture. And what's even worse is that black people, we've internalized that. We love us some white folks. So I mean, in fact, nothing gets black people more excited than validation from white people. That's one of the effects of colonialism. That was actually one of the conversations I had with students here the other day. Was I said, let's read through the psychological impact of colonialism so we can identify this as our mental illness. So don't think I'm letting any of us off the hook. We're not pure and perfect and wonderful. We're screwed up, flawed. I know I am. And so at the end of the day, this mental health piece is critical. We created the Black Financial Therapy Department because of that. I said, okay, first thing we got to deal with when we talk about wealth is that half of us are crazy because you've dealt with some crazy stuff. It's like those. You ever read those studies about children who are raised by schizophrenic or alcoholic parents and how those kids grow up and they're crazy? So you are the crazy kids. You didn't ask for this, but this is what you were cursed with. But you can cleanse yourself from this by connecting. Again, you fight the demon by connecting to God. So connect to your spirituality, connect to your internal compass. All right, connect to whatever frequency you want to vibrate on, and if you want to vibrate on the love frequency, the intelligence frequency, the productivity frequency, the family frequency, right? The freedom frequency. I think all those frequencies are available to you, but you have to meditate your way into that. You can't sort of just follow the crowd because half these Negroes out here are crazy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. In fact, I have dealt with. I did not know that. I forgot. I didn't know this was a thing. My wife was waving, she and I were waving the Ghanaian flag because we're in Ghana. They gave us a flag. We're like, this is cool. And you would be stunned to see how many black people got mad at me for waving a Ghanaian flag. And I was like, what's wrong with that? And they were like, the Africans this and the Africans that, and they don't do. I said, man, I'm not saying that there's not a bone to pick in certain areas. I'm sure that there is, right? I'm not discrediting any of those arguments, but I said, I don't really think you understand the dangers of isolating yourself from those who could be your natural allies. See, look, I'm not here to. I think somebody said this. This is a good point, and I want to make this point because it's interesting. Somebody said, "Oh, they're just finessing African Americans, and they're just saying nice things to get all of our money. They want to get our 1.7 trillion. That's why they're saying, 'Welcome home, brother,' and 'Come on in, brother,' and they just want to get our money." And so here's what I believe. Of course, they want to get some of the money. Why wouldn't they? If they're running businesses, of course they want to make revenue. Um, but do you understand how trade actually works? Just because, see, this is the thing I really want you to understand. When you talk about this scarcity mindset, some people assume that because someone's using you, that you're not using each other, or because you're helping them, that you're taking something away from yourself. And what that speaks to is that speaks to a culture and a mindset. It speaks to a mindset that doesn't understand one of the most fundamental concepts of economics, which is the law of reciprocity. So when someone says, yeah, when you go to Ghana, they're going to say these things and connect you to Ghana, and some of it may not be authentic. They're just doing that because they know African Americans are rich and will spend our tourist money in Ghana. I say, yeah, I expect they would do that. I expect that they probably tell us things that we would like to hear sometimes in order to get us to be more generous with our money. I gave out hundreds of dollars just yesterday to people that would walk up. Like I went to the castle, it happened a lot. The guy will walk up and he'd say, "Hey, brother, you a strong man. How are you?" And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, he's trying to be my friend because he wants me to give him money. And I would give him money, right? And so I get it, right? But here's the thing. What's really important to understand is the nature of trade. So while at the same time, I see the Ghanaian government and I see people of Ghana, greeting American tourists in a really enthusiastic way because we have so much wealth and I get that. And some of it, I'm not saying none of it's authentic. Some of it is as well. I made real friends here. I also see guys like my friends over at Earn Your Leisure who are going to Ghana and buying extremely low cost land and building infrastructure, apartment buildings over here in Ghana as well. I know Michael Roberts. When I came to Ghana in 2019, I came with Michael Roberts, who runs over $1 billion worth of companies, and Pastor Jamal Bryant was in the group, and the rapper Ti. He popped in and popped out. Somehow he was around. I don't know why, but either way, and the goal was to find investing opportunities in Ghana, right? To come in and to create business deals that allowed everybody to make money. So one criticism, if someone has a scarcity mindset, is they could say, those dang African Americans, they just coming over here to get cheap land. They're just doing what the colonizers did, right? That would be a valid argument because we've had that's what the colonizers did. They're like, hey, there's cheap land here, there's gold here, there's this here, there's that here, right? So the question becomes, when do you jump the line between something you define as exploitation versus something you define as just trade? Because trade is a key to wealth. Exploitation, allowing yourself to be exploited, where you give up something, you get nothing back, that will leave you poor. That creates the doctrine of unequal exchange. That's like a bad relationship where somebody is just having sex with you and they're not helping you at all in your own life, but they just want to sleep with you, or somebody's taking your money and giving you nothing in return. That's not good. But trade is a key to wealth. There's a trade involves this idea that's really important to understand called reciprocity. Thank you, Calvin Williams, smartest man on earth. Reciprocity means, yeah, I'm giving you the best that I got, but you're giving me something back that I value. Do you understand? And what you also must understand is that a person or entity that does not involve in any trade or any reciprocity with any other entity is going to become economically and even emotionally isolated. Like a person who says, well, I'm not doing nothing nice for no man because I don't want to get used, or I'm not giving no money to no woman because all they do is they take your money. That person that isolates themselves is doomed to struggle. They're going to have scarcity forever. Why do you have scarcity? Well, because you're not healthy enough to know what it means to form a reciprocal relationship with another party. Do you understand what I'm saying? Anybody think about this? I want you to understand this point. So I'm going to make sure we drill this in so you get this. Does anybody know? Does anybody know somebody who's so scared of being used that they won't even go out on a date? Well, nah, these women, these chicks, they be wanting you to take them to Cheesecake Factory, and they only going out with you so they can get a free meal, right? You ever see guys like that? All they want is a free meal, so that's why I don't go out with these women. And then you sitting there all by yourself, right? Ain't don't no woman want to be around you because what you're saying is that you want the benefits of other people to pour into you, but you don't want to pour into anybody else. So you are isolating yourself, sir, and making yourself less attractive to anybody who might want to form a healthy reciprocal relationship with you. Maybe she does want to give you some, but she's not going to do it because you're going to call her a gold digger from day one. Don't nobody want to deal with that. Right? So, because you don't understand the rule. The rule is, hey, I take care of you, you take care of me. Whatever that looks like, as long as we're both happy. That is the essence of trade. That is a whole economic lesson right there. That's what trade is. Trade means I give you something, you give me something. Wealth grows because of this. London became the first city in the Western Hemisphere to have over 1 million people in its population and became the richest city on earth for one reason. And that was because they had the Thames River where people would gather and they would engage in trade. All economic theory tells you that increased trade increases wealth. So when you come and you tell me that all the people the people in Africa are just using me for my money, I'm like, well, of course they'd want to trade with a rich American. I don't mind breaking off a couple of dollars, but because I'm getting something in return, we're forming a relationship. That's what relationships look like. And so anyone who and it's not just the talk about Africa, it's how people even talk about love and relationships. Black wealth drops because of the breakdown of black families. Black families fall apart because of the breakdown of black relationships. Black relationships fall apart when people don't understand give and take. When people don't understand reciprocity, they're not willing to sacrifice or commit to anything because you're trained on the scarcity mindset, which says, I'm not going to do nothing for you because I'm so scared that you're going to take something from me and I'm going to be played like a sucker. That's what happens. But one thing I'll tell you about wealth is that you'll never be wealthy if you don't invest. If you ain't ready to let go of some money, let go of some time, let go of some energy, let go of some relate, whatever it is you got to let go of, you're gonna have to put in. You receive what you put in. You harvest what you plant. If you can't let go of the seed, then you will never grow the tree. So letting go of the seed means I form relationships with African countries and I want to understand them because maybe they'll understand me and then we're pouring into each other. Every single morning I pour into you and a lot of you I meet you and you say thank you Dr. Boyce for what you do for us and I say thank you for what you do for me because we have formed trade. We have formed a healthy relationship, healthy trade. Everybody's winning from this. And if everybody ain't winning, then tell me what I got to do to make sure we're all winning. That's why I start off by saying my goal is to make sure that you are good. What matters to you? You want to have more money in your pocket? Let me help you. You want to have a better family? Okay, let me see what we can do about that. You want to get your kids educated on economics? Okay, I got that. I got a whole PhD. Let's get it cracking, right? I pour into you not because I'm just trying to be the most giving person on the planet and just be played like a sucker. No, I pour into you because y'all pour into me. You support what I can't build the black business school without black people that believe in what we're doing. So it's reciprocity, man. That's what you look for. That's how you build wealth. You build wealth through trade. The other thing about trade is that trade does not happen without trust. Traumatized people can't trust, which was why we study trauma on such a deep level in the Black Financial Therapy Department, because it's like the trauma causes us to say, well, I ain't doing nothing for no Negro because ain't no Negro done nothing for me. Well, that's why I don't loan money to relatives because da da da, because you know that your relatives aren't going to pay you back. So the lack of trust is there, which means that you're going to have a lack of opportunity and prosperity, right? Working with your cousin, you're better off if you're working with your cousin, but you can't work with your cousin because you can't trust him. And I get it. And it's traumatic. And then so the trauma feeds into more trauma, which causes broken relationships. So all this anger and hostility that you'll see, whether it's toward people in Africa or toward each other, that's very anti-black wealth. That energy is very anti-black wealth. Trust is critical. Scarcity mindsets are detrimental. And the Europeans, I think, are masters at just nasty, distrustful, scarcity minded environments. And so they are the ones, unfortunately, in their culture that were trained to beat you up and take all your stuff. And that just doesn't make you feel any better about trade. So when it comes to me, when it comes to trade, I admit, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Um, I will do business with people I know in Africa. I would do business with other healthy minded African Americans. I don't do a lot of business with big white corporations because I don't trust them. When we started the Black Business School, I said I do not want to take money from the government because they take it away. They cut your DEI program. Next thing you know, your funding's gone. And I and I don't want money from these corporations because the minute they scrap you from your budget, your whole business dies. I said if we can't go find another way to get the money, then we just can't do it. We're gonna live below our means. That's how we're gonna get it done. All right, so let's keep it going. Let's finish up this discussion about uh why why Europeans were just kind of the assholes of the earth. Uh Not all of them, not every single white person, but collectively, yeah, y'all are pretty terrible. So, mercantilism and the profit motive began around 1400s through the 1600s, and this is when Europe began to define power through trade, gold, and empire building. So they wanted gold, they wanted empires, etc. Wealth became the most important thing, so that's why America's very rich, but they're very poor in a lot of other areas. We're very poor when it comes to family. We're very poor when it comes to mental health. We're very poor when it comes to physical health, but we're very rich economically, which gives us a lot of power around the world, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it. Also, exploration wasn't so much about curiosity anymore. It actually became about money and domination. And then the 1300s through the 1600s, gunpowder became big. So the Europeans adopted Chinese gunpowder methods, and so that's when they came up with cannons and muskets and a lot of naval artillery, which gave them a big edge over the Africans. So the Africans were not really ready for that type of military firepower coming from this ghetto gangster from across the ocean who has trust issues and trauma that causes them to behave in really uncivilized ways. So it's interesting, it's ironic that we were dehumanized by people who had kind of dehumanized themselves, right? Maybe the reason we were treated like animals is because we were dealing with animals, and that's terrible to think that way, but that's actually almost makes sense, right? If I run into a lion in the jungle and I try to deal with the lion as like he's a good guy, he's like, no, I'm gonna eat you because I'm a lion, and I'm gonna treat you like food because I'm an animal, you're an animal, we're just a couple animals out here in the jungle. There is no like me elevating to your plane. I'm not gonna do that. And so how do you deal with that lion? Well, you keep your distance. And if you have to kill the lion, then you do it, but you really don't want to kill the lion. You want to keep him alive, but you can't assume the lion is a person. And I'm not saying that all white people are just subhuman. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want to get into that type of conversation because I know I know lots of good white people, right? And or people that want to be good people. But I think systematically, I think that you have 1,000 years of culture that was built around this kind of savage mentality where you're dealing with you're almost subhuman in your own behavior. So you see these black people that aren't prepared for that, so you treat them in a subhuman way. So maybe that's the connection there. Also, the Atlantic slave trade system, Portugal, Spain led the way. England, France, and the Dutch joined later on. So enslavement really became a business model. So it was backed by governments, it was backed by banks. Even the church backed it. So they institutionalized black inferiority as a justification for seeing human beings from Africa as cargo. And so, to some extent, for the most part, that same institutionalization of these ideas still exists today. That's why, if you go to most prisons, particularly those in the South, there are more black people than white people because that has not changed. Also, I'll tell you, Christianity and just religion in general, it was twisted horribly to justify slavery. They even use science to justify racism, and so racism, white supremacy, etc., as well as Christianity kind of backing that, led to the perception of black people as being savage, and just these ridiculously unhuman creatures that deserve to be treated that way. Like, and to the point where really people were convinced that they were doing us a favor by making us slaves. And that mindset, what made me think about that was I remember for many years, I would fight with the NCAA about paying college athletes. If you go back to 1995, I was writing articles about that topic, and it was pretty dangerous because I was on the campus of the University of Kentucky at the time, and I know Coach Rick Pitino. One of the players told me that the coach told him or told the team not to read my articles because he didn't want them even real thinking about how much money that they were actually worth. And one of the things I remember hearing, which was just the most ridiculous argument ever, was that athletes shouldn't get paid because they're doing them a favor by keeping their money. That if they get their money, all they're going to do is they're going to waste it like a bunch of monkeys and go out and buy a bunch of stupid stuff and whatever. And I said, well, it really doesn't matter what they do with their money because it's their money. I'd never heard you say that about white people before, but for some reason there's a perception that you're doing black people a favor by enslaving them or taking their resources. And I obviously that's wrong. Um, Also, divide and conquer was big in Africa. So Europeans, they didn't have to beat all of Africa. They pretty much were able to sort of pour into pre-existing factions and differences, tribal rivalries and things like that, that made it easy for them to establish a foothold. Once they established a foothold, they said, okay, now we can go kill them all or enslave them all or whatever it is. And so ultimately, these deals with the devil are that were built on these differences made Africans much easier to conquer. If you go into the history of China, it's kind of crazy. It's fascinating. It's brutal, but there were these crazy, uh, brutal leaders that killed lots of people. But the long-term benefit was it created like a unified China. Right, like where China's got this big blob of over 1 billion people that all speak of whom speak the same language. They made Mandarin the official language, so they kind of move as one big unit, which gives them a tremendous amount of power. And so if you look at the work of Kwame Nkrumah and others, Patrice Lumumba, they had Muammar Gaddafi before Obama's team went over and killed him. They pretty much wanted Africa to be unified. They saw China, they see the power that China has through unification. They're like, yeah, we want some of that. I don't know if that's gonna. I don't know what it's gonna take for that to happen. It's gonna take a long time, but I can tell you that if some semblance of unity was to happen throughout the diaspora, where we can find some simple unifying principles, and I think the unifying principle could be that the Europeans have been terrible people toward us, right? That could be the one simple unifying principle. So, which says that our differences can be put to the side because we got this common enemy. I know that the Jewish community, that was what Hitler brought them together. They were like, okay, Hitler doesn't care if I'm liberal and you're conservative, or I'm rich and you're poor. All he cares about is that we're all Jewish. So that actually was a unifying force that led to the Jewish community becoming very powerful. So the question is, what can unify us? What can unify us? And this is where I go back to something I believe in deeply. Again, you have a right to disagree, but I'll lay it out: the Black First philosophy. Be one, Black First. One thing I when I read about Malcolm X and how he felt about all this, because I like him, I like to kind of study what he was thinking, even though I like to add to his ideas, right? Because I don't think anybody's ideas are perfect, including my own. So I'll listen as a contribution, but it doesn't form the entirety of what I think. I don't think you cloning someone's ideas is the best approach. I think adding to that and kind of taking away stuff like that. So I think with Malcolm, because remember, he died as a very young man. He was in his 40s. He wasn't as mature. I'm 10 years older than him. So as a man who's almost 10 years older than he was when he passed, I look at that and I say, okay, where would he have been? Oh, died at 39. I'm sorry. Thank you, Calvin. I got that wrong. So he died at 39. I thought he was in his 40s. My apologies. So 39, that's very young. That's very young. If you go listen to things I was saying at 39, they're very different from things I say at 54. So I would argue that I bet you Malcolm, Martin, all these guys, if they were 54, the question is, what would they be saying? If you get to your 50s, the 30s is like you're like a baby. When you're in your 30s, you think you're grown. But then you hit your 40s and your 50s and you're like, "Man, I thought I knew it all, but I've learned a lot since then." So my thought is like what would Malcolm be saying if he lived to his 50s or his 60s? I think some of his message would have evolved over time. I really believe that. But I do think one area that he was 100% correct was he talked about being black first. He talked about avoiding these connections with these pre-existing boxes that come from colonizers, whether it's like the Democrat Republican box or the liberal conservative box. Just be black first. The gay straight. I'm gay. You're straight. Well, maybe for some people, who you're having sex with, it should not be the first thing that I learn about you, right? Not to say that that's not important for you. I get it, right? I respect it completely, but maybe that's not the thing that should divide us. Do you see what I'm saying? And so to me, black first means let's focus on simple ideas that we can rally around that will allow us to have some sort of unifying structure that will allow you to compete with the devil. Do you understand? And the thing is that makes it hard for you is you have to compete with the devil without trying to become a bigger demon. Because at the end of the day, you have to save your soul. So I'm never going to be in here teaching you how to be a capitalist. I could explain it to you. If you want to be a capitalist, that you have to do it on your own time because capitalism is inherently flawed. It was created in a space that was chaotic and ghetto and ratchet and the Middle Ages, Europe, and they went through some crazy stuff. So they were just crazy people. So I don't want us to be crazy people. I think that we have something divine about us as Black people. I think that we by being the original man, the original woman, we are special. I think that the fact that African Americans in particular, the fact that we're the only group of people in the history of the world that can say our ancestors survived the slave dungeons, our ancestors survived the Middle Passage, our ancestors survived 250 years of the most brutal slavery known to man. Our ancestors survived 100 years of Jim Crow. Our ancestors survived 40 years of mass incarceration. Our ancestors survived gangster rap, like the 90s. Just surviving the 90s alone is a lot. That's a badge of honor. And I don't know if anybody remembers the 90s. I was traumatized, right? So the fact that we survived all this means that we are just so special. We are a divine creation. The fact that you can go through all of this and still even be partially in your right mind speaks to how extraordinary you are and how capable you are. And so in my view, if anybody has the abilities and the skill sets necessary to go out and conquer the world and dominate or whatever it is we're trying to do and stand tall and strong and be powerful, it would be us. We've got what it takes. But then also on top of that, we should be the leaders of the earth. We should be the ones who are guiding the guiding lights for the planet. We should be the ones. Now we don't have hypersonic missiles and things like that, right? So that's an issue. Um, but I do think at the end of the day, when it comes to having wealth and power and things like that, I have no doubt in my mind that B1 people, those who understand the importance of Black health and wealth and relationships and mental and physical health and investing for our kids and economic intelligence, B1 people are the best equipped on the planet to really, really, really do well in the next generation, the next two or three generations. And when you have that power in your palms, the palm of your hands, when you're controlling those $1 trillion companies, because that's what your grandkids are going to do, I think that they're the ones who should have that type of power because they understand little basic things that capitalists don't get. For example, like the fact that you can do well and still pay your workers a fair wage or they understand that look I can commit to my family and my children without it necessarily taking away from my right to be happy as an individual, right? Or that I can go out and be successful and conquer the world without it destroying my mental and physical health. I think that that balance, and I think the word balance is really a great way to describe what Black people and African people around the world kind of have that I don't necessarily see from Eurocentric cultures. That balance is really what creates life and sustainability for almost any organism. Any organism, any plant, any ecosystem must have balance. Right now, the world does not have balance. Like Benjamin Netanyahu getting on the phone and forcing Donald Trump to go bomb Iran, that's not balance. That whole 20 years of us fighting in Afghanistan and all that being connected to the Israelis pretty much controlling the United States, that ain't balance, and that's very dangerous. Last point I want to mention is uh is that when you're talking about so the overall theme here, let's package this up so we can finish up for today. The overall theme here is that it is my conclusion that Africa was financially raped in many ways because they just didn't know what they were dealing with. They just I don't even think that they could conceive of human beings behaving this way. And so now that we know and we've seen what 500 years of this looks like, the question is how do you move forward strategically in that type of world? And I remember Will Smith saying something that I thought was really wise. I like Will Smith. He comes from a smart family. I told you I never met Will, but I met his brother Harry and talked to him for a very long time. And he was talking about what it's like to be famous when you've got predators around you, people that are going to try to extort you, or harm you in some way. He said you have to learn how to fend off the predators without letting your heart go dark. And so what does that mean for us? Well, a few things. You can write this down. These are some things that you can consider. Number one, you have to control your economic narrative. You have to. Stop sending your children to work for white people. You should control your educational narrative. Stop letting your child's primary source of education come from Europeans. They're just not equipped to train Black children on things they need to know. So when I hear Black people complaining about what Black history they're not teaching in the public schools, I don't tr I maybe I'm just sound skeptical, but I don't trust that they're going to do it the right way anyway. Why are we not stepping in and saying, okay, we're going to do this? Whatever they do in the school is what they're going to do in the school, but we're going to step in and make sure you're reading Dr. Claude Anderson, you're reading about Marcus Garvey, you're reading Malcolm X, you're learning what we need you to know because these are your damn kids. This is your responsibility. So, and I think it's colonialism that leads us to think that it's somebody else's responsibility to educate our kids. No, those are my kids, damn it. I got this. So if you don't define yourself economically and educationally in America, somebody else is going to do it. Why? Well, because historically speaking, you've always been a commodity. So when you're sitting there and you're unoccupied, you're like a car without a driver. You're sitting there, that beautiful car sitting there without a driver. Well, they are trained to look for empty cars and get in those damn things and drive them to the destination they want them to go to. So do not send your children into the world as an empty car looking for a driver. You be the driver. You make sure they're the driver of their own life. They're shaping their own economic destiny. Also, one of the things that happened during slavery is that there were some African leaders that were trained to sell their own people. We know about that part of the narrative. Maybe they didn't think that they were going to be treated that badly. I imagine that they knew what they were going to go through. They wouldn't have done it. Who knows though? Nobody knows. But all I can say is that one thing you must understand about the massive wealth that Black people and African people have around the world is one of our biggest resources is our people. Years ago, when Bill Gates was running around the world telling everybody that the population was getting too big and that they should all get abortions and stop having kids, African people didn't listen to that. African people kept having kids. And now, years later, what are they saying? Now they're like, oh my God, the population's not growing fast enough. It's crazy, right? This is why you can't just listen to people just because they're on TV. Like it's weird. It's like, wait a minute, 20 years ago, you were telling us that we were doomed because there were too many people. Now you're telling us that there's not enough people? What the hell, man? You want us making people or not making people? Well, this is where I tell you that instead of listening to the demon, you got to listen to God. God told you to make people. God told you. Again, I'm not even going to reference the Bible or nothing. You can look it up if you want to. I know there's Bible verses on it, but I'm just going to give you just the simple idea that you're supposed to make people. You're like you're supposed to reproduce. And here's the thing. People are an asset until you turn them into a liability, until you let somebody else take control of those people, meaning your children, until you decide you don't want to invest and pour into those people. I see so many people who ignore their God-given opportunity to be a great parent, and they trade that in so they can stay in good graces with their job. So you're spending more energy staying in the good graces of your European captor than you are staying in the good graces of what I think is your divinely inspired opportunity and obligation to really be there for those kids. Again, I'm not telling you how to do your career, nothing like that, but I really feel bad for people that trade in everything related to family just for a career or cut off relatives over things like money and stuff. Like that's to me, you're kind of missing the point. So ultimately, trading people for profit it doesn't make sense. Um, people matter. In fact, people increase your profit if you want to look at it like that. One more thing is that economic power has to be defended. You have to have a strategy. So when we talk about things like financial plans, group economics, training the children, building family trust, those are all methods of economic protection. Again, you don't fight the devil by becoming a bigger demon, but you fight the devil by protecting yourself from the devil. And so one thing about America and capitalism in general is that if you have a bunch of stuff and you can't defend it, then they're going to take your stuff. Sometimes they'll take it through brute force, like they used to do back in the day. Like a lot of trillions of dollars was lost by them just killing us and taking our land or locking us up and taking our stuff, or they'll manipulate you out of that. The healthcare system is a massive financial drainer. Right? So when you don't take care of your health, then they come in and they charge you tons of money for pills and surgeries. And next thing you know, they have all your money before you die. There are other areas we could talk about, and I'm not going to belabor that because it's time for us to go. But generally speaking, I want you to really sort of think carefully about what does it mean to protect my wealth. There are so many different avenues of protection. Another one of which I'll mention quickly is culture. Do you have a wealth protecting culture that comes with financial frugality, not living above your means, not being tempted to go deep in debt just to go buy extra crap, or overspending, or just wasting money trying to impress people, or buying things that you don't actually need, or spending before you save and invest? Your biggest, most important expenditure should be you and your family. First thing money should go toward is fortifying your location, protecting your position, making sure that you're good, making sure that you're safe, making sure that you're secure. So there's no bill you have more important than you putting money into that savings account, investing account, whatever it is that you're doing to defend yourself. You have to do it because if you don't, the number one weapon of choice for the capitalistic vulture is to exploit your financial insecurity. If you or your children are in a capitalist society and they are not financially secure, then they're going to be made into slaves. That's it. That's how the game works. So now we know a couple things we didn't know before. I'll keep reporting in from Ghana as if I have another revelation. Today's a rest day. I'm going to stay in my room for a little while because I got to rest. They had us going all day long. But on Saturday, we're doing some other stuff. They're doing a naming ceremony at the water. But the thing is, I already have a name. When I came with Mike Roberts in 2019. But my name is Kabu Kubi Okansi, and so I was actually brought into the Kubi Okansi tribe. And so I have my name, so I don't actually need to go to the naming ceremony. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with my time. But anyway, enough of that. Enough of that rambling. All right, so I hope everybody's joining us at the All Black National Convention. If you can't make it, I get it, but if you can, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be August 21st to the 23rd. It's 4 weeks away. And you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com to learn more. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. Also, don't forget, if you want to be on the text list for this class, text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. And last but not least, we're doing stock options income training tonight, Prime 101. So if you want either a refresher or you're a beginner at earning income from stock options, you can join us there. And if you're interested in options in general, text the word options to the number 87948. Text options to 87948. We're going to do that tonight at I think I said 8, but actually it might be 7. So it's one of those two. I'll text out the time. So have a good day, everybody. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all. I think I'll see you tomorrow if I don't have to go. If not, I'll send you a text. All right. Love